The system's mission was for me to deliver a brutal reality check to the conniving fake heir, but it completely botched the timing. I arrived just as the story was reaching its finale. The imposter was a family's darling, while I, the true heir, had been kicked out to live on the streets, clutching half a stale bagel and literally fighting a stray dog for scraps on the pavement. The system gave an embarrassed chuckle and then vanished, ignoring all my calls. A script this tragic snuffed out any desire I had to keep living. Screw it. I was done playing this game. I was debating whether getting hit by a car or jumping off a building was the better exit strategy when a group of thugs dragged me into a van. The leader pulled out a blade, pressed it to my throat, and sneered, "Call your family. Tell them to bring $5 million. You make a sound, and I'll send you straight to hell." It seemed fate had a plan for me after all. I nodded, relieved, tossed the rest of the bagel, and screamed at the top of my lungs, "Help! Kidnapping!" The two kidnappers froze. One of them quickly clamped a hand over my mouth, hissing, "You want me to kill you right now?" I shook my head violently and managed to muffle out, "I don't believe you. Go on, show me." The guy was out of patience. He ignored me, pulled the phone from my pocket, and used my face, which was practically welcoming death, to unlock it. With a swipe of his thumb, he dialed the most recent contact, Chloe. After an agonizingly long wait, the call connected just a second before it would have gone to voicemail. Before the kidnapper could even speak, Chloe's venomous voice filled the cramped van. "Ethan, can you stop clinging to me like some kind of parasite? How many times do I have to tell you? I will never ever accept you as my brother." Her last words echoed with pure fury. The kidnapper was taken aback, clearly stunned by her intensity, but professional duty called. He put on his meanest voice and yelled, "Your brother is with us. $5 million, or he's dead." Chloe just scoffed. "Ethan, is this your latest pathetic stunt? Faking your own kidnapping to get my sympathy? I'm warning you. Stop pushing my buttons. What else are you good for besides being jealous and trying to frame Leo? Go ahead and kill him. I'm not paying a single dime." From the other end of the line, a soft, gentle male voice chimed in, "Chloe, Ethan probably just wants some attention. That's why he planned this. Maybe we should just go see him." "Leo, you're too nice," she retorted. "Someone as cowardly as him, who only cares about squeezing more money out of our family, get kidnapped for real? This is just another one of his pathetic self-directed dramas." With that, she hung up. The van fell silent. After a long moment, one of the thugs turned to the other. "Hey, I thought this Ethan kid was supposed to be the real sterling heir." From the sound of it, they liked the fake one a lot more. They both turned to look at me, sizing me up. My expression was grim. I couldn't help but remind them to be more professional. "What are you looking at me for? Get on with it. The sun sets in 30 minutes. If you don't kill me now, are you planning on buying me dinner? If they killed me, I could finally escape this new life as a guy everyone hated." I felt a little bad for the original Ethan, wherever he was, but I had absolutely no desire to keep living in this world. Before I came here, I was a corporate drone working 9 to 5. No parents, no family, no friends. My entire existence was a lonely, repetitive commute filled with a weary confusion about the future. That is, until I was jaywalking and got sent flying by a car running a red light. In that moment, I felt an incredible sense of peace. It was like a faint light in the darkness pulling me away from my suffocating life, finally easing the constant pressure on my chest. But then I opened my eyes and I was handed a brand new nightmare. At the same time, a book materialized in my mind, informing me that I had become the universally despised character in a story about a beloved imposter. I was the real heir, swapped at birth by a nanny who had finally found his biological parents after 18 miserable years in an orphanage. Unfortunately, the fake heir had already won everyone over. The real son, returning after 18 years, was nothing compared to the brilliant, charming imposter, deemed crude, unpresentable, and utterly worthless. The true heir was cast out. Everyone went right back to fawning over the noble, elegant imposter, admiring his designer clothes. The book ended with a single dismissive sentence. Ethan Hayes, who tried so desperately for attention, was finally thrown out by the stirrings. Penn Niles, He ended up dying at the hands of kidnappers when his ransom was never paid. Reading that, I looked at the two thugs in front of me with a glimmer of hope. After I asked them to kill me, the van fell into another awkward silence. The two buzz-cut kidnappers huddled together, whispering for a while before making a decision that completely deviated from the original plot. They weren't going to kill me. Instead, they were going to rob a jewelry store for some quick cash. The younger one sounded nervous. "Boss, I thought we were just doing a ransom job. Robbery is a whole different thing. I don't know if I'm cut out for it." The older one was exasperated. "It's all about getting paid. What's the difference? We'll use this kid as a hostage. Grab the jewels and bolt." The nervous one asked, "But what if we get caught?" "Don't worry, I did my research. The food in the New York City County Jail is way better than back home. I guarantee you'll get 3 square meals. It'll be worth the plane ticket I bought to get you here." The younger guy nodded, relieved. Then he turned to me, his face grim as he looked at my expression of pure despair. "You'd better cooperate. Be a good little hostage while we do this, and we'll let you go afterwards. Can you grant me one small wish?" I asked. "Spit it out." I had no interest in this new plot twist. In the book, my character had already faded from the narrative by this point. I looked at them with all the sincerity I could muster. "Considering all my hard work as your hostage, once you're done with the robbery, could you do me a favor and just kill me?" The jewelry store robbery was going surprisingly well. The two thugs had a system. One was smashing a sledgehammer against a display case, while the other was in a tug-of-war with me over his knife. "It's my knife. Let go," he yelled. "Come on, man. Just a quick slice across the neck. It'll be over in a second. I won't take up much of your time." "Get off me," he shouted. "I know the difference between robbery and murder. You're not tricking me into doing more hard time." A crowd of onlookers had formed a circle, chattering away excitedly. What a primitive way to rob a place that's reinforced glass. You know, look how tired the guy is. He's been at it forever and hasn't even made a crack. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Today, we're live from a smash and grab robbery. Don't forget to hit that follow button. And a huge thank you to our top supporter, Chloe, for the Titan gift. And to answer your question, top gifter, we're broadcasting live from the corner of South Street and Market. Besides me, there was one other person trapped in the store, a young woman in an expensive-looking custom gown who hadn't gotten out in time. She was huddled in a corner, trembling, watching in terror as I wrestled with the thug for his knife. I could see fear in her eyes, but also a flicker of admiration and resolve. As sirens wailed closer, the guy with the sledgehammer, frustrated and embarrassed that he still hadn't broken the glass, flew into a rage. He whipped out a switchblade, his eyes darting around wildly before he grabbed the terrified girl from the floor. "If I'm going to prison," he roared, "I'm taking someone with me." The gleaming switchblade made the girl's face turn ghostly white, a stark contrast to my own thrill of excitement. The ending I'd been waiting for was finally here. If this was quick, I wouldn't even have to worry about dinner. So long, original Ethan. If I caught up to him in the afterlife, maybe we could compare notes. The blade was raised high amid a chorus of screams. I lunged in front of the girl, shielding her with my body, ready for the end. The screaming was deafening. I felt the cold steel slide into my stomach, followed by the slow, warm ooze of blood. A wave of dizziness washed over me from the blood loss. It felt just like the moment the car hit me in my old life, a familiar and strangely comforting peace. The world lost its color, the scene before me fracturing into a million sharp pieces. I closed my eyes, a relieved smile on my face, and let out a long sigh. Finally, it was over. My body went limp through the girl's tearful shouts. My eyes drifted shut. In the last second before everything went black, I thought I saw a woman frantically pushing through the crowd. Her face was a mask of terror as she cradled my limp body, screaming, "What are you all staring at? Somebody call 911. From her eyes instead of her jaw, which looked so much like mine, I realized it had to be Chloe, my biological sister from the story. But the real Chloe would never ever look at me with that kind of concern. According to the book, she was the one who hated the original Ethan the most. The day he came home, Leo, the imposter, staged a dramatic runaway. They found him the next morning, soaked from the rain, and he collapsed into their arms like a terrified little deer, sobbing. "Mom, Dad, Chloe, I thought you were going to abandon me." Chloe hugged Leo protectively, then turned and snarled at the real Ethan. "This is all your fault, you hick. Don't think you can just show up and take Leo's place because we share some DNA. I'm telling you right now, blood means nothing compared to the 18 years we've had together." At the time, the original Ethan was just standing there in the opulent Sterling living room, wearing a cheap t-shirt with a shabby bag at his feet. The air conditioning gave him goosebumps, and not a single person would even look him in the eye. He was a country boy who didn't belong, an object of contempt for high society. They all resented him for showing up and shattering the family's peaceful existence. From that day forward, the original Ethan spent a year desperately trying to win them over to earn the family affection he'd never had. All he got in return was their scorn and the judgment that he was an embarrassing hick who was a stain on their reputation. In the end, after being framed multiple times for trying to hurt the innocent Leo, the original Ethan was finally thrown out, left with absolutely nothing. And now I was the one left to deal with this miserable destiny. This colorless path was one I had no intention of walking down for a second longer than he had. The strong, sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nose. I forced my eyes open, and as I turned my head, I saw Chloe, her expression tinged with worry. Overzealous medical care had turned my perfect suicide attempt into a rescue mission. I'd finally found kidnappers willing to do the job, and the knife had missed every vital organ, leaving me with just a flesh wound. I'd have to find another way to check out. In the original story, Ethan died because the ransom never came. I don't know what went wrong this time. I was in the exact same situation, yet here I was alive. Did I not cooperate well enough? Was my death wish not convincing? The sheer fact of being alive was infuriating, and Chloe's voice grating on my ears made it worse. "Ethan, if you weren't always pulling these stunts and getting hurt for attention, I wouldn't have assumed it was fake." I shot back. "Shut up." The original Ethan would have probably apologized. I wasn't him. Sinking into the soft hospital bed, I felt something uncomfortable pressing against my neck. I reached up and found a worn-out Lucky Charm on a string. The silk pouch was frayed and faded with something hard inside. I had none of the original Ethan's memories. So to me, this piece of junk was just annoying. I ripped it off my neck and tossed it across the room in a perfect arc. Chloe stopped mid-sentence. The little charm lay on the floor, and a muscle in her jaw twitched. Her eyes were fixed on my face as she ground out, "Ethan, that Lucky Charm. You just threw it away. What else was I supposed to do?" I asked, looking up. It was bothering me. My life is already a complete disaster, being dragged into this world to be hated by everyone. Can't I at least throw away a piece of junk? I don't even want my own life. Why would I care about some faded charm? Chloe's voice grew sharper, rising in volume. "Ethan, do you even remember how you got that charm?" It barely cleansed to hear. No, the entire novel was sitting in my brain, but I hadn't had the time or inclination to read it closely. I'd only skimmed the plot to understand my situation. As for some Lucky Charm, maybe it was mentioned somewhere in 1,000 words, but it left absolutely no impression on me. Chloe was seething, her face flushed with anger. She stood up, staring intently at me, searching for any sign that I was faking it. But my completely placid expression told her the truth. I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. She kicked the charm away in frustration. "Ethan, your acting skills are really improving." She sneered. "I bet you hired those kidnappers yourself, didn't you? All just to get our attention and worm your way back into the family. It's a good thing Leo was the one who stayed with us, not a manipulative schemer like you." Nothing she said could get a rise out of me. After all, I wasn't planning on sticking around. I ignored her and scanned the hospital room. The room was on the 18th floor, a very lucky number. The window opened wide enough for a person to fit through. My apologies to the doctors and nurses for wasting their valuable time. No time like the present. I pressed a hand to my wound and slowly shuffled toward the window. Chloe stood with her arms crossed, watching my pain movements with a smirk. What now? Another dramatic performance. The things you'll do for the Sterling family's money. It's truly sham, Ethan. Her taunt died in her throat, her expression shattering into pure horror, reflected in her wide eyes. I took a deep breath. My face relaxed, and I closed my eyes as I vaulted over the windowsill. The weightless feeling of the fall came to an abrupt halt. A searing pain shot through my arm as the muscles were wrenched. I opened my eyes, annoyed, and looked up to see Chloe, her face crimson with effort, desperately clinging to my arm. Her face was a mask of sheer panic, eyes bloodshot, veins bulging on her temples. I struggled against her grip. Let go. Her fingers only tightened, her voice trembling uncontrollably. Ethan, I won't. I was wrong. Okay, just hold still. I'm going to pull you up. I don't know where she found the strength, but she gritted her teeth and somehow managed to haul all 150 pounds of me back through the window. My arm felt like it was about to pop out of its socket. We collapsed on the floor in a heap, and she pulled me into a crushing, trembling hug, shaking from the adrenaline and terror. Are you insane? She gasped. This is the 18th floor. If I hadn't caught you, you'd be dead. As she said it, a realization seemed to dawn on her, and the color drained from her face. She stared at my impassive face, her lips trembling. Ethan, I thought you were just acting, that this was all for attention. You really want to die? Fear made her words stumble. I just looked at her confused. Chloe had always hated the original Ethan. My death should have been a cause for celebration for her. So why did she look so horrified? Before I could make sense of it, the strain from the struggle tore my stab wound open again. Dark red blood seeped through the bandages. My vision blurred, and then everything went black. The next time I woke up, I was in the Sterling mansion. The bedroom was spacious and bright, but it wasn't the one the original Ethan had been given. I didn't have his memories, but I'd read in the book that his room was a cramped space, no bigger than Leo's walk-in closet. It was originally the maid's quarters. When the unloved true heir returned, that tiny room became his domain. There was no belated affection or compensation, only a collection of disdainful and annoyed glares. As night fell, I could clearly hear Chloe arguing downstairs in the living room. Her eyes were red, and her voice was thick with tears. He really wants to die. He almost died in front of me twice today. Mr. Sterling's stern voice cut in. He may be my biological son, but I knew from the moment I saw him that he was rotten to the core. He only showed up on our doorstep for the Sterling money. This whole suicide act is just another performance to get more cash out of us. Mr. Sterling was right about one thing. The original Ethan had sought them out. He'd seen Mrs. Sterling on television and was stunned by the resemblance. They had the exact same eyes, the same bone structure. It was like looking at a reflection. Having been an orphan for 18 years, he decided to take a chance. And as for asking for money, he was a high school senior with nothing to his name. How else was he supposed to survive? The Sterlings have been rich their whole lives, chauffeured everywhere, with 6F-figure dividends hitting their accounts more reliably than Ethan could find his next meal. Even Chloe and Leo got a $50,000 monthly allowance. On top of that, every luxury item they bought went on Mr. Sterling's black card. The original Ethan, meanwhile, had to scrape together enough change just to ride the bus. On his first day in the Sterling mansion, he asked Mr. Sterling for $10,000 to cover his high school tuition and living expenses for the semester. In response, his own father sneered at him. Couldn't even keep up the act for a single day. Could you? Already begging for money. He eventually tossed some money at him, adding with a sneer, "You of desperation. Maybe that nanny did us a favor 18 years ago." Imagine how devastating those words must have been for the original Ethan to hear. Luckily, I'm not him. Downstairs, Chloe's face was pale, her voice trembling with emotion. Dad, he wasn't faking it. It was 18 floors. If I hadn't caught him, he'd be dead. Who would have the courage to jump from that height unless they were in absolute agony? Even now, her hands were still shaking as she replayed the horrifying moment in her mind. The shock was evident on everyone's faces. The Sterling's usual annoyance replaced by stunned disbelief. I awkwardly pushed the door open, interrupting at the worst possible moment. "Excuse me, can I leave now?" Their surprise turned to shock. They were used to seeing me gravel and fail, desperately trying to earn my place here. Seeing me suddenly indifferent to them all was jarring. But I wasn't the original Ethan. I had no expectations of affection from these people. Silence hung in the air. Leo, sitting beside Mrs. Sterling, put on a pained expression and lowered his head. "This is Ethan's home," he said softly. "He should be the one to stay. I'm the one who should leave the marriage alliance with the Vances. That should be his, too." His words were a calculated reminder to the Stirlings. The brief softness on their faces hardened back into ice. Mrs. Sterling pulled Leo into a protective embrace, then turned her face, so much like my own, towards me with disgust. "Your acting is getting better and better, all to steal Leo's place. It's all about marrying Isabella Vance, isn't it? Ever since you came back, you've done nothing but try to frame Leo and drive him out. You've ruined the peace in this house." I ignored her completely, my expression blank. Without a second glance at any of them, I walked towards the door. Chloe rushed after me, grabbing my arm. "Ethan, I don't believe you're like that." "I believe you." I didn't need her to believe me. All I knew was that staying here was just delaying my exit plan. But Chloe was insistent. Ignoring Leo's hateful glare, she forced me to stay, terrified I'd try something again. Back in the Sterling mansion, my accommodations improved slightly. I was moved from the maid's room on the first floor to a guest room on the second, but everyone in the family could tell something about me was different. The original Ethan used to wake up early every morning to make breakfast for the Stirlings. They would eat every bite while scrutinizing him, then immediately praise Leo, saying his hands were made for the violin, not for such menial tasks. Since my arrival, I hadn't set foot in the kitchen. The next day, I slept in late. The pain in my stomach had mostly faded. As I came downstairs, I heard Mrs. Sterling's voice in the living room dripping with disapproval. "Waking up this late. He has no manners whatsoever." Leo chimed in, finding concern. "Mom, he was injured yesterday." "Please," she scoffed. "I'm sure it's fake. Getting injured for attention is his specialty. Ethan, go to the kitchen and make me some breakfast." Years of business dinners and drinking with Mr. Sterling had ruined her stomach, making her extremely picky about food. According to the book, the original Ethan cooked for her every day, preparing complicated, bland meals that were easy on her digestion, often burning his hands in the process. My cold gaze swept over her. "Mrs. Sterling," I said flatly, "I'm not here to be your cook. If you want me to make you breakfast, you can pay me the market rate." Leo immediately jumped in. "Ethan, how can you speak to Mom that way?" I looked at his gloating expression and stated calmly, "She's your mother, not mine." Mrs. Sterling froze. It wasn't my refusal to cook that shocked her. It was that I had stopped calling her Mom, even as he was being thrown out of the house. The original Ethan had been crying out for his mom. Now, that hopeful title had been replaced with a cold, formal Mrs. Sterling. I went into the dining room by myself and grabbed some cold toast and milk from the table. An office drone is never a picky eater. The only goal is to fill your stomach. When Leo saw I wasn't fawning over his mother like usual, he switched tactics, sidling up to me with a look of timid concern. "Ethan," he said softly, "I know you like Isabella, but we're getting engaged in a few days. I hope you won't be too heartbroken." He stared at me, clearly expecting me to fly into a jealous rage, which would give him the perfect opportunity to play the victim for his mother and paint me as the villain. But when I heard his words, my eyes lit up. "Living here." Chloe watched me like a hawk, a 24/7 surveillance camera, terrified I'd try to kill myself again. But on the day of Leo's engagement party, with so many guests around, no one would be paying attention to me. It would be the perfect opportunity to make my exit. As for being in love with Isabella Vance, I had to laugh. In my mind, which was a complete blank slate regarding this world's past, I had no idea what she even looked like, let alone how to be in love with her. The Sterling-Vance marriage alliance had been planned for over a decade, just waiting for Leo to turn 20. At the lavish engagement party, Leo stood center stage in a bespoke suit, bathed in the spotlight, the object of everyone's admiration. He played a dreamy, flowing piece on the violin. Sitting in a dark corner, I suddenly understood the original Ethan's bitterness. Raised in the lap of luxury with more money than he could ever spend, his parents had poured a fortune and endless effort into cultivating him into the brilliant specimen he was today, adored by all. All of it should have been Ethan's. His life, which should have been like a fairy tale, was replaced with the hunger and violence of an orphanage. While Leo was begging his parents for a new sports car, the original Ethan was getting beaten bloody over a piece of candy. After everything he went through to find his way home, he was rejected by his own parents as crude and worthless in their profit-driven world. The most infuriating part was that the nanny who had swapped him was long dead, leaving their two twisted lives with no hope of ever being set right. When the music ended, Leo walked over to me, his eyes shining with expectation. "Ethan, how was my performance?" I wiped some cake from my mouth and nodded earnestly. "It was great, but it's a little too highbrow for me. I'd be more impressed if you could break dance." His innocent facade almost cracked. He leaned in close, hissing in my ear, "You came back too late. Ethan, in this world, even your own parents have no use for a worthless son. You get that, don't you?" He had a point. To the Stirlings, I was worthless. The whispers from the surrounding guests were impossible to ignore. Not that they were trying to be quiet. Is that the real Stirling's son? He looked so cheap. I heard he grew up in an orphanage. Started asking for money the day he arrived. Figures. All those years on his own, he's completely ruined. If I were a Stirling, I'd never acknowledge a son that embarrassing. They were right. The Stirlings had never wanted me. A son was meant to inherit the business. A daughter to secure alliances through marriage. I was useless for either purpose. But by the same token, this family of strangers meant nothing to me. While everyone was busy schmoozing and sipping champagne, I slipped out the back door unnoticed. Standing on the high rooftop terrace, a gentle breeze felt cool and pleasant against my skin. The thought of finally leaving this world eased the tightness in my chest. I knew it would disrupt the perfect engagement party, but I doubted anyone would mind a little interruption. They'd probably all cheer when the universally despised heir finally made his exit. I spread my arms, breathing in the rich scent of roses from the garden below, a small smile playing on my lips. Just as I was about to vault over the railing for a final reunion with the pavement, a panicked voice screamed from behind me, "Ethan, don't do it." I froze. It was Chloe again, impossible to shake. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she edged toward me with her arms outstretched. The worry on her face so intense, it was almost blinding. "Ethan, please listen to me," she pleaded, her voice soft. "It's dangerous up there. Just come down, okay?" She watched my every move, terrified of saying the wrong thing, like a frightened kitten begging me to listen. I frowned watching her. Even from this distance, I could see she was trembling. For a split second, I almost felt a genuine sister's terror for her brother. But didn't Chloe hate me? Why was she acting so out of character? I took another step, leaning my upper body out over the edge. Chloe screamed in panic. "Ethan, don't. I was wrong, okay? I was wrong about everything. Just calm down, and I'll do anything you want. I promise." She didn't look like she was faking it. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her perfect hair was a mess in the wind. But from behind Chloe came a cold, dismissive laugh. "Ethan, you'll really do anything to ruin this party, won't you?" I looked past Chloe and saw Isabella Vance dressed in an elegant evening gown. She was the girl the original Ethan had been in love with. I skimmed that part of the story. When he first came to the Stirling mansion, when everyone else despised him, he met Isabella. She was beautiful, gentle, and from a wealthy family, a ray of light in his bleak existence. And with the marriage alliance between their families, he knew that if he hadn't been switched at birth, he would have been the one marrying her. The boy from the orphanage fell head first into a fantasy he created for himself, the frog dreaming of his princess. But the Van Cess weren't interested in the true heir. They wanted a polished, presentable heir from a powerful family. Leo, perfectly groomed for high society, with the obvious choice. How could nobody like Ethan ever hope to win Isabella's affection? So that ray of light quickly shifted its beam the moment she realized the Stirlings didn't care for their real son. It was a doomed, one-sided love that left the original Ethan completely broken. Isabella despised me. Seeing me teetering on the edge of the roof, She just sneered. Is this the only way you can get attention, Ethan? Threatening to kill yourself. It doesn't matter what you do. I will only ever love Leo. Hearing this, Chloe spun around and slapped Isabella across the face. Isabella, who the hell do you think you're talking to my brother like that? Isabella looked completely bewildered, unable to understand why Chloe, who had always hated me, was suddenly defending me. She shot a hateful glare at me, blaming me for everything. What did you do, Ethan? What did you say to Chloe to make her turn on me? I'm telling you, Leo isn't just my fiancé. He's the man who saved my life. I will only ever love him. Her defiant words hung in the air until another woman's voice cut through the tension. But wasn't Ethan the one who saved you? The question sent a shock wave through the small crowd on the roof. Even under the party lights, you could see the color drain from Leo's face. The speaker was Nora Ellis, the girl I'd saved at the jewelry store. Unlike the day of the robbery, the fear in her eyes was gone, replaced by a look of unwavering trust and a deep, persistent concern for me. Isabella was stunned for a moment, then let out a derisive laugh, even from across the terrace. I could feel her disgust. Ethan, are you so desperate for my attention that you'd even try to steal the credit for saving my life? Leo, standing beside her, bit his lip and looked at me with shifty eyes. Ethan, I know you want to be a part of this family, and I know I've been in your place for 18 years, but everyone knows I saved Isabella 2 months ago. I know you like her. If you want to take the credit for it, I'll let you. His timid expression and self-sacrificing words made Isabella's eyes well up with tears. Even Chloe looked momentarily confused. Nora just rolled her eyes, pulled her phone out her clutch, and played a video for everyone to see. The video showed the wreckage of a car crash. A bloodied, unconscious Isabella was slumped in the driver's seat. A tall, skinny figure was struggling to drag her from the car before frantically dialing 911. The suburban streetlights were dim, but Nora's phone camera was high quality. My profile was perfectly clear, right down to the small mole by the corner of my eye. The book only mentioned this incident in passing. It said Isabella had been distracted while driving on the outskirts of the city, hit a guardrail, and knocked herself out on the steering wheel. She vaguely remembered someone pulling her from the wreck. When she woke up in the hospital, Leo was by her side. Naturally, she assumed he was her savior. Her affection for him deepened, and they moved the engagement date forward. Nora continued to argue on my behalf. I may not be a Sterling, but I've heard the stories. Ethan is the real son. He suffered for 18 years, and when he finally came home, you all treated him horribly. How much pain must a 20-year-old kid be in to be so determined to die that he would unhesitatingly throw himself in front of a knife for a complete stranger? She spoke with passionate anger, and the onlookers murmured in sympathy. The video on her phone kept playing on a loop. My gaunt, malnourished frame, straining to pull Isabella from the mangled car, terrified of a gas leak, dragging her to safety. Finally, Nora fixed her gaze on Leo's ashen face and added coldly, if I hadn't been driving by right then, I guess someone would have gotten away with taking credit for being a hero. Leo's face was a ghostly white. He bit his lips so hard it nearly bled. His eyes filled with pure hatred. I shot Nora a grateful look. I wasn't the original Ethan, but I thanked her on his behalf. Her chance recording had given him the justice he never got. If I ran into him in the afterlife, I'd be sure to pass on the good news. Isabella's hand fell away from Leo's arm. She swayed on her feet, staring at me in disbelief. Ethan, it was you. You were the one who saved me, Chloe quickly added, her voice strained with anxiety. Yes, Ethan, just come down. It's dangerous. Please, just come over here. The concern on their faces looked real. For a second, it felt like I was a beloved one in this story, but my character, the universally despised one, was long overdue for an exit. The wind howled behind me, whipping my hair across my face. The worried faces in front of me seemed to grow larger. I couldn't wait any longer. I had no obligation to play out the rest of this miserable script for him. I couldn't even manage my own life. I certainly didn't have the energy to live someone else's. I made my decision. With a collective gasp from the onlookers, I threw myself over the railing. I spread my arms like a broken-winged butterfly and fell. the stars of the night sky reflected in my eyes. In the last moment on the terrace, I saw Isabella's face closest to me, her concern twisting into sheer terror. She lunged for me, but her fingers only brushed the hem of my jacket as the fabric slipped through her grasp. Amid a symphony of screams, I hit the ground hard, but felt none of the pain I expected. I wiggled my arms and legs. I was lying on something soft. This wasn't the expected outcome for a 5-story fall, especially since the floors in this building were taller than average. Through the noise, I could clearly hear Chloe's voice choke with relief. Thank God I had them set up an airbag just in case. No wonder I didn't feel a thing. This whole situation was so absurd it could be its own TV series. I clutched my chest, which felt like it was breaking for entirely different reasons, and let myself pass out. The world around me shifted, and I felt like I was trapped in a bizarre, nonsensical dream. In it, I was back to walking alone through the city. The vibrant world of neon lights and nightlife always separated from me by a hazy fog. People passed by as if I were invisible, brushing past my shoulders without a glance. I was living my old life again, a monotonous commute, rarely speaking to anyone. Every day, I'd wake up with the same dead eyes and let the crowds carry me along. Suddenly, a car engine roared as it sped directly toward me. I could have moved, but instead, I let out a sigh I'd been holding in for a long time and stood my ground. The tires screeched. I opened my eyes. I was back in the hospital. I hadn't even been in this world for a month, and this was my second visit. This time, the bed was surrounded by people, all of them looking worried. When they saw I was awake, a collective sigh of relief went through the room. Isabella's eyes were red as she gripped my hand tightly, as if afraid I'd disappear. "Ethan," she choked out, "I was so wrong about you. Promise me you won't do anything like that again. I know you've always loved me. As soon as you're better, we'll get engaged. I swear I'll only ever love you." I pulled my hand away. Love you? When did I ever say I loved you? The person who loved her was the original Ethan. If Isabella were to drop dead right now, maybe she could catch up to him in the afterlife, and they could have their tragic romance. I was just a ghost from another world. I had no interest in this woman I barely knew. Besides, Isabella was hardly a prize. The day the original Ethan arrived, she had appeared out of nowhere, acting like a perfect lady, asking about his hobbies and casually dropping hints about the marriage alliance between their families. But all the while, she was carefully gauging the Sterling's reaction to him. She was trying to figure out who they valued more, the real son or the imposter they'd raised for 18 years. The answer quickly became obvious. As soon as she realized the Sterlings didn't want him, Isabella dropped him and went right back to fawning over Leo. The two of them would often stand on the steps of the mansion, laughing at the pathetic sight of the original Ethan being treated like trash by everyone. To me, she was just bad news. My coldness must have been obvious because she shivered slightly before forcing a smile. "Ethan, how can you say you don't love me? You risked your life to save me, and you jumped because you were heartbroken about my engagement. That's why you did something so crazy." Mr. and Mrs. Sterling chimed in, wiping away tears. "That's right, Ethan. As soon as you're better, we'll have your name legally changed to Sterling, and you and Isabella can have a beautiful wedding. How could you have jumped from such a high place? Do you know that every time I close my eyes, all I can see is you falling? I've neglected you all these years, son." I watched their performance with cold detachment. This belated affection was like a piece of moldy bread to me. No matter how starved I was, I wouldn't touch it. I pulled the thin blanket over my head and said coldly, "I don't feel well, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling." "Miss Vance, please leave." Through the blanket, I could hear Mrs. Sterling's muffled sobs and Chloe's quiet pleading. Finally, I heard a soft whisper from someone. "Ethan, I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." The crowd finally left, and I surveyed the room once more. This was clearly a VIP suite. The windows were sealed shut. That's why they felt safe leaving me alone. It was late now, the bustling city quiet, except for the dim yellow glow of the streetlights below. I curled up in bed, rubbing the constant ache in my chest. Felt like my heart was missing a piece, draining all my interest in life. Even simple tasks like getting out of bed required a monumental effort of will. Felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my heart, suffocating me. I started plotting how to get away from all of them so I could get on with my plan. The door of my room was thrown open, and a slender figure appeared before me. She radiated a cold anger as she stalked forward, her hands closing around my throat. "Ethan," she hissed, "what are you plotting now?" Her fingers tightened around my neck, and a wave of pure joy washed over me. A little more pressure, a little more force, and maybe tonight I could finally make my escape and be free of this hated existence. This nightmare of a life could be the next person's problem. A small smile touched my lips. I relaxed completely, not even bothering to struggle, just savoring the approach of death. The air in my lungs was running out. A second before I blacked out, the pressure on my neck vanished. Air flooded my lungs, yanking me back to the world of the living. My compliance seemed to infuriate her even more. "After you ruined the engagement party, Leo disappeared," she raged. "His phone was smashed and left behind. You had him kidnapped, didn't you? Who else would do it? You've always hated him. What have you done to the others? Ethan, how did you convince them you're innocent?" I coughed for a long time, catching my breath. Kidnapping? An expensive operation like that. How could the universally despised charity case afford that? Just yesterday, I checked the original Ethan's bank account. There was a pathetic $20 in it. To make matters worse, a $19 subscription fee went through this morning, leaving me with a single dollar. I couldn't even afford a hot dog, let alone hire kidnappers. This was definitely to blame Ethan for everything part of the script, lying in a hospital bed. And I still get accused. I cleared my throat, looked at the woman, and asked the first question that came to mind. "Who are you?" Her expression froze. The harsh fluorescent light of the room made her face look even colder. After a long pause, she answered stiffly. "What game are you playing now, Ethan? How could you not know who I am?" Of course, I didn't know her. The novel in my head was massive, filled with countless names. I couldn't possibly remember every character. I only recognized Chloe because we looked so much alike. We could have been twins. I knew Isabella because the stirrings never shut up about her engagement to Leo. But this woman who had just appeared out of thin air, I had no clue. I made up a quick excuse. I hit my head when I fell from the roof at the party. My memory is a mess. I've forgotten a lot of people. My brief explanation made her stumble back a step, her eyes instantly welling up with tears. Her lips trembled. "You forgot me?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yes, I've forgotten everyone who wasn't important. That includes you. I might have imagined it, but when I said the word unimportant, I saw her flinch. Impossible, she cried. We grew up in the same orphanage. How could you forget me?" Seeing her pained expression, the pieces finally clicked into place. This was Sarah Jenkins. In the story, she was Leo's biggest admirer, his most devoted follower. She was also the original Ethan's childhood friend from the orphanage. She and Ethan were the same age. They had looked out for each other in the orphanage, surviving together until they were 18. When Ethan found his family, Sarah had been happy for him and had even come to the mansion to visit. But there she met Leo, debonair and charming in a white suit. And just like that, 18 years of childhood friendship were erased by the sight of the elegant boy playing the violin. Sarah fell completely for Leo. Knowing she was from a different world and could never be with him, she resigned herself to admiring him from afar, content to just watch over him and wish him well. When I first read the story, I could never understand how Sarah could abandon 18 years of friendship with Ethan and fall hopelessly in love with Leo after meeting him only a few times. Seeing her now, it all made sense. The original Ethan was like a weed that had grown thorns to survive the orphanage. With resources so scarce, he had to fight for every scrap of food, for every chance to learn. Sarah, small and weak, had survived by hiding behind him, managing to get through high school in his shadow. Now she was an adult capable of protecting herself. The crutch she had leaned on for a decade was no longer needed and was tossed aside. Leo, bathed in the spotlight, became her new idol, the object of all her teenage fantasies. As for Ethan, he was just the ill-tempered, aggressive loser she left behind. I gave her a dismissive look. Like I said, I've forgotten everyone who was important. If I don't remember you, it means you were disposable. Sarah left the hospital in a daze, surprisingly forgetting all about her missing idol. Shortly after she was gone, I slipped out of the hospital myself. Breathing in the fresh night air, I walked slowly to a large bridge near the hospital. Standing on the edge, I looked down at the dark, churning water below. I'd been stuck in this world for a month. It was time to go. It was probably too late to catch up with the original Ethan in the afterlife. But I still smiled as I looked down at the raging water. Just as I was about to climb over the railing, a strong arm wrapped around me from behind, holding me tight. A damp cloth was pressed over my mouth and nose, a sharp chemical smell filling my lungs. Within seconds, I lost the strength to fight back. Right before I passed out, one last thought crossed my mind. I'm harder to kill than a cockroach. When I came to again groggy and disoriented, the first thing I heard was the sound of crashing waves. The salty air was thick with sea spray. I slowly opened my eyes to find myself lying on a large rock by the ocean. Standing over me, a smug, triumphant look on his face, was Leo. His expression was twisted and ugly, a far cry from his usual innocent facade. The sky was just beginning to lighten in the east, the sun about to break through the darkness. He looked at me with pure hatred. Ethan, you were gone for 18 years. Why did you have to come back and ruin everything for me? Now the whole family is on your side. I faked my own kidnapping, even planted evidence to frame you, and no one believed it except Sarah. He grew more agitated as he spoke, his beloved status having crumbled since my arrival. After a moment, he calmed himself and leaned in to whisper in my ear. Today, Ethan, I'm going to prove to you that when it comes down to it, they will always choose me. I glanced at the thugs standing nearby and understood his plan. Who the Stirrings chose meant nothing to me. I wasn't the original Ethan. I had never expected anything from them in the first place. Looking out at the churning, rising tide, a bold idea began to form in my weary mind. The Stirrings arrived sooner than I thought they would. Leo and I were being held on a rocky outcrop. One wrong step, and we'd be in the churning black water. Chloe stood on the beach not far away, dark circles under her eyes, screaming, "Take whatever money you want. Just let Ethan and Leo go." The kidnapper yelled back impatiently, "Let them both go. Then what's my leverage? You can only choose one. I'll let the other one go when the money's here." Leo started sobbing hysterically. "Mom, Dad, Chloe, save me." Sarah's worried gaze darted between Leo and me before she finally spoke, her voice hesitant. "Ethan, you hired these men, didn't you? Please stop this. The tide is coming in, and it's dangerous out there. If you just come back, I'll forgive you for this whole stunt." I rolled my eyes. The kidnapper was losing his patience. Make a choice now, or they both go in the water. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling were frantic. After a long, agonizing moment, Chloe finally spoke, her voice strained. "Let Leo go. We'll get you the money. Just don't hurt Ethan." No one disagreed, though every one of them looked conflicted and full of regret. I understood their choice. They had invested far too much in Leo. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling had poured 18 years of money and effort into crafting their perfect son. Chloe had spent 18 years being his loving, protective older sister, thousands of days and nights, rooms filled with birthday and Christmas presents. That was her investment of love. And Isabella, even though she now knew I was the one who saved her, had known Leo her whole life. The feelings she had for him weren't entirely fake, and she couldn't just throw them away. As for Sarah, she had always been the one hiding behind me, taking. She was a taker nature. She didn't know how to give anything back. I was the only one they had invested nothing in, the one who was abandoned from the start. When you've invested nothing, there's nothing to lose. Of course, they wouldn't choose me. Leo gave a small, satisfied nod. Before he left, he leaned in and said smugly, "See, Ethan, I told you you'll never be better than me. There will never be a place for you in their hearts." I just raised an eyebrow. "Is that right?" The sun was beginning to rise, its first rays shattering across the surface of the water, like broken gold. Leo was already sobbing in his parents' arms. Chloe turned back to me, her voice frantic. "We're getting the money, Ethan. 30 million. Just hold on. I promise I'll save you. Isabella chimed in. Ethan, don't worry. I'll marry you. Promise. After this, I'll always choose you first. But a strange sense of calm washed over me. I looked at them all, my heart perfectly still, and said in a quiet, raspy voice, "Don't waste your money." Every face on the beach froze. Since I was living this life in his place, I figured I might as well say a few words for him before I left. I turned to his parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, there's no need to waste your money on an outsider. My name is Ethan Hayes, not Ethan Sterling. You never wanted me, and frankly, I'm tired of all of you. In the year I lived in your house, I never once framed Leo out of jealousy. If you don't believe me, check the security footage." Chloe's face went deathly pale, her eyes widening in terror, as if she knew what was coming. I turned to Isabella. I barely even remember what she looked like. "Miss Vance, your opportunism is disgusting. You don't love anyone but yourself. Your love is just a currency you spend on whoever can advance your future." Isabella buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with shame. That left one person. "As for you," I said, looking at Sarah, "I'm sorry. What was your name again? It doesn't matter. I don't remember you, so there's nothing left to say." She had shown up so late in the game, more than a month after I'd arrived. His childhood friend of 18 years. Before that, she'd been too busy silently worshiping Leo to notice that the boy she grew up with was an entirely different person now. Sarah's legs gave out, and she nearly collapsed, murmuring over and over, "Impossible, Ethan. How could you forget me? You promised you'd always protect me." Protect her? I'd rather protect the stray dog. The tide was rising fast behind me, waves crashing against the rocks. And then, to the sound of their horrified screams, I turned and threw myself into churning sea, my thin body disappearing into the waves like a falling star. The sun finally broke free of the horizon, flooding the ocean with light as the salt water forced its way into my nose and mouth. The fog that had clouded my mind finally cleared. The past flashed before my eyes like a movie reel. The orphanage, the Sterling mansion, being thrown out onto the street, and I finally understood. I understood why my original world. I never had any friends or family. It was a world I had invented to escape the pain. A fantasy world where, of course, no one could see me or talk to me. I was a ghost wandering through a city I'd built in my mind, pretending to live a simple, lonely life. The book in my head, the story, it was never real. The words were just my own memories, my own life, and now death was shattering the illusion. As the last of the salt water filled my lungs, I slowly closed my eyes. I finally understood there was no transmigration. I was and always have been a universally despised Ethan Hayes. Nora's epilogue. After more than a month of nonstop work, I finally allowed myself a tired stretch. Ellis Industries had cut all ties with the Stirlings, and breaking in a new supplier was always a headache. I drove to the Sterling mansion to pick up the last of the termination paperwork and found the family in the middle of tearing itself apart. Mrs. Sterling, hair wild, face contorted with rage, lunged at her husband, raking her nails down his cheek. "You bastard," she screamed. "You married into my family's money, and you dare to have a child with a nanny. You swapped him with my son, my real son, and let me raise your bastard for 19 years. I'm telling you, we are never ever finished." I remembered then that the story was all over town. A few months ago, Ethan Hayes had thrown himself into the ocean. They never found the body. The desperate Sterlings had spent weeks at the beach waiting for a miracle that never came. But instead of a miracle, they got a soap opera. An anonymous paternity test arrived at the mansion. It stated in no uncertain terms that Leo was Mr. Sterling's biological son. A completely shattered Mrs. Sterling launched an investigation into the events of 19 years ago and finally uncovered the truth. Mr. Sterling had married into her family's wealth. Feeling emasculated and resentful, he'd started an affair with their young nanny. The nanny got pregnant and by a twist of fate gave birth on the exact same day as Mrs. Sterling. Weighed down by the shame of having married into money, he looked at the son born to the woman he actually loved and made a decision. He swapped the babies. From that day on, his illegitimate son was raised as a Sterling heir, while Mrs. Sterling's true son, Ethan, was abandoned at an orphanage. In the chaotic mansion, Mrs. Sterling was still screaming like a mad woman. "Mark, you kept me from my son for 19 years, you monster. My family should have never let you through the door. I've already transferred all my shares in Sterling Corp to the rival board members. Your pathetic little stake is worthless now. I'll burn this family to the ground before I let you have a peaceful day for the rest of your life." Oh, Ethan, my poor boy. What did I do to deserve this? Raising another woman's child for 19 years, while my own son was left to rot. Mrs. Sterling had always controlled the company with her 40% stake. By transferring it all to their biggest competitor, she had Mr. Sterling kicked off the board the very same day. The Sterling empire crumbled overnight. As for Chloe, I saw her sitting numbly on the porch steps. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes bruised with exhaustion. She hadn't slept in weeks. In her hand, she clutched a faded, worn-out Lucky Charm. I heard it was a cheap souvenir she bought on a whim. The day Ethan came home, she tossed the worthless thing to her newfound brother. It was the only gift she had ever given him, a $2 trinket. He had worn it around his neck every single day, treasuring it. I don't know how, but it had ended up back in her hands, looking even more tattered than before. Her life as a Sterling Eyes was over, even the mansion. I glanced back at the realtor, showing the property to the new owners. The Sterlings had lost everything. Soon they wouldn't even have a roof over their heads. As for Leo, I heard he was clinging desperately to Isabella, but the Vance family's fortune had been tied to the Sterlings. With the Sterlings gone, the Van Cess were in free fall. They had no time or money for an imposter with no inheritance. Still, he clung to her. She was his only option. There was no place for him with the Sterlings anymore. And while Mr. Sterling was his biological father, he was just a figurehead who had married into the family's wealth. Mrs. Sterling had always held all the real power. I ran into Isabella at a networking event a while later. The proud, confident woman was gone. In her place was someone desperately chugging cheap wine and begging a small-time businessman for contracts. The man just looked at her with pity. "Look, Isabella, I'll be honest with you. Since the Sterlings fell, Ellis Industries runs this town now. And everyone knows Ethan saved the Ellis Heiress in that robbery. The word is out from the top. No one's going to do business with you. It's a shame. If you'd married Ethan, I heard the kid was crazy about you." Isabella stumbled out of the room in a daze. I saw her later arguing with Leo on a rain-slick street. "This is all your fault." She shrieked at him. "You worthless bastard. If I had married Ethan, I wouldn't be in this mess." Leo grabbed her arm, his face twisted. "We were engaged. Your parents treat me like dirt, and you use business as an excuse to stay away for days. You think the Van Cess can just dump me? Not a chance." It had only been a few months. The elegant, charming Leo was gone, replaced by a desperate lunatic. But as crazy as he'd become, he had nothing on Sarah. Sarah dropped out of college. When Ethan had first found his family, he'd excitedly taken her hand and said, "Sarah, my parents are rich. As soon as I'm settled, I'll ask them for money to pay for your tuition." But he only managed to scrape together enough for her first year before he died. Sarah, who had always relied on his protection, had a harsh awakening. Without Ethan, she couldn't even afford to stay in school. There was no one left to shield her from the world. Beaten down and broke, she dropped out and started working menial jobs just to get by. One evening, I went to the cemetery to visit the empty grave they'd made for him. From a distance, I saw Sarah kneeling before the headstone. She was sobbing, slapping her own face over and over as she traced a small photo etched into the stone. "Ethan, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please come back," she wept. "Just visit me in a dream. I never knew how hard it was without you. Please don't forget me, Ethan. Please. We knew each other the longest. Why did you forget me? You remembered Chloe. You remembered Isabella. Why did you forget me?" Her sobbing just made me sick. It was a good question. After 18 years, how could she have thrown him away so easily for someone like Leo? My appointment, a psychologist, sat across from me, finishing a glass of juice. He was young, but already making a name for himself as a brilliant therapist. I stirred my own steaming coffee. You don't like coffee, Mr. Cole? He shook his head. I never acquired the taste. I'm actually skipping a class to be here. So if you have questions, Miss Ellis, please ask. I had to hide a smile. Who would have guessed this? A brilliant new psychologist was only a college sophomore. I studied his familiar, handsome face and lowered my voice. I've been following a rather dramatic story lately, and some parts don't add up. For instance, that anonymous paternity test, who sent it to Mrs. Sterling. And how did they know to even test Mr. Sterling and Leo? He finished another glass of juice. It's not that complicated. Normally, when a child is discovered not to be biologically related, the father is more eager for a replacement than the mother. He hasn't gone through pregnancy. He's less emotionally invested and more willing to cut his losses. But Mr. Sterling was far more hostile to the real son's return than Mrs. Sterling was. That suggests his relationship with the adopted son was special. I nodded slowly, but I still don't understand why the real son had to jump. Why not just expose the truth? He smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. A simple reveal wouldn't have been enough. The Sterling Empire would have survived, only with the real son gone. Consumed by a guilt so powerful it destroyed her, would Mrs. Sterling choose to burn everything to the ground? Besides, he added, a family like that isn't worth returning to. I nodded again, taking a sip of coffee. One last question. Back at the jewelry store, did he really want to save me? Or was he just trying to become my savior, so I'd help him fake his death in the end? He looked down, a slow smile spreading across his face. A little of both. He recognized the eyes to Ellis Industries and took a gamble. Luckily for him, it paid off. I grabbed his hand. Ethan, that knife was inches from killing you. He looked at me, his expression serious. I know. I was careful. Life is precious. Dying is not a solution. It is a weak person's revenge, and it never makes the powerful feel remorse. I never believed my death would make them change. I knew the only person who could save me was me. I stood up and gave him a hug. Ethan's new life was a good one. He was 1,000 miles away from his old family, studying psychology. The darkness that had always clung to him was gone, washed away by the long, hard climb out of the mud. I like your new name, I said, and I meant it. A genuine, easy smile touched his lips. I was always meant for the light. I just had to break through the clouds to find.